Welcome to Get Real, How to Live a More Authentic Life, with psychologist and author of over 75 books, Dr. Barry Weinhold. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to How to Live a More Authentic Life. Get Real, How to Live a More Authentic Life with Dr. Barry Weinhold. My name is Ben Barber. I'm the producer of the show, along once again with Ashley Ross. Dr. Weinhold, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. It's early November and winter is set in. And we're getting snow in the mountains. The ski areas, some of them are open already. So in Colorado, everybody goes around saying, think snow. Think snow. That isn't what I do anymore, but I used to when I was skiing a lot.
You know, that's interesting. I was talking to Ashley this week about some work stuff, and her kids were in the background, and I was like, "Oh, they didn't go back to school yet from a sickness." And she was like, "No, no, it's a snow day." And I was like, "This was a couple weeks ago," and I was like, "It's the middle of October." And
so you get snow
like,
that early?
Yeah. Not always, and obviously, like today, we've had warmer weather, so it fluctuates up until about Christmas time.
Yeah.
And then it'll stay.
Well, actually here, the humidity is so low that even if it's in the 30s or 40s, you can go out with like a vest and maybe a sweater or something and be fine. I mean, it's just like as long as the sun's out and there's not wind blowing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that low humidity helped you both in the heat and in the cold.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. That's good to know. That's good to know.
It isn't that hot and it never gets quite that cold. I mean, yeah, low humidity can it's that high humidity, that damp cold and damp heat that gets you.
One of the things that I wanted to just say in this episode as well is Barry, you have a beautiful new website for people to check out at circle.org. And you can click the link in the description of this. And of course, all of the every week, Barry works very, very hard to give you resources that go along with that week's episode, as well as many, many other resources, the over 75 books on psychology that he's written, and all of that stuff can be found in the description of this episode in the show notes. But it's very nice, and it's all sort of just this gigantic resource guide that's very cool. So make sure you check that out as well.
Yeah, it's my way of kind of giving away other, even more resources than what we do on the podcast.
It's very resourceful, as Ashley can attest, as she had a big part in the new website. But anyway, also Ashley, wonderful job last week. Last month, sort of stepping into those shoes as co-host. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about this month that Dr. Weinhold is going to be explaining in a second is the authentic family.
Mm-hmm.
And since both of you are parents, and I don't have any kids, and I don't actually have very much of a family to speak of anymore, I'm gonna let the two of you handle this, and I'll be around in the background if you need me. But I'm excited.
I want to challenge you a little bit, because you grew up in a family.
I did grow up in. That's true.
And so
that is true.
Anybody who ever grew up in a family is going to find a lot of good information here. That is those who have our parents and have a family. Well,
I'll be around, so if there's something that I want to jump in on, I definitely will. But I'm gonna hand this over to Ashley to steer the ship from now. So thanks, guys.
All right. So This month, we're looking at, as Ben said, the authentic family. So, what does that kind of have in store for everyone this month?
Well, the whole month will be how to create an authentic family, and I'm going to dig deep at a couple points and help provide some more the kind of information you wouldn't get anywhere else, sort of that I've accumulated in working with clients and writing books and doing seminars, working with professionals, and there's a lot of information out there, but I've kind of distilled what I think parents need to know if they're going to raise authentic children and create an authentic family. So the first episode is going to be just more background about why this is important, and then I'm going to move into looking at how uh, how how to really be an authentic parent to start with, because it's hard to raise a or have an authentic family if you're not an authentic parent. So that'll be the second one, and then we'll look at how authentic parents can meet the needs of the child to help them on the way towards authenticity. And there'll be actually episodes 3 and 4 on that. So I'm going to go a little bit in the weeds about how to do that for parents and give you some tips on how to manage that whole process. So I guess in kind of giving an overview of these 4 episodes that are coming up this month, I have to go back to a quote that Virginia Satir, a former family therapist, once said, which I think is so accurate. She said, "If you could change the family, you can change the world." And I think that's what I believe too, is that much of what goes on in the world is born through the experiences that people have in their family of origin and then on as they become parents. Uh, so we're going to look at that and what kind of things you need to be paying attention to if you want to raise your children to become authentic adults. And that's what we need more of in our society, because democracy works best when we have authentic voters, authentic citizens. And if we don't have enough of those, and I don't think we have enough right now to make democracy really work, uh, then we're in trouble, because throughout history, all the major civilizations or empires, you want to call them, or whatever, that collapsed, they didn't collapse because of some corrupt leader or something at the top. It was at the bottom that caused the collapse. You had people living inauthentic lives, and they didn't know how to really deal with any kind of autocratic leader, for example. So that's what we're dealing with right now. And I think the inauthenticity of our voters is our biggest threat to democracy. So it while we're talking about the family, it really is looking at a much broader picture of what life could be and what life is right now. So I'm going to try to bridge that gap and talk about how you can go about being an authentic uh, parent to start with, or to be able to create an authentic family. And so that kind of is where I want to kind of go to in this episode. And I'm going to look at, in fact, you know, really parents never get any how to do it manual when they get a child. It's just pretty much whatever they learned growing up in their own family, and maybe if they did take a course or something about it, or they read a book about how to be a parent, they picked up some tips there. But even there, it's still it's a 24/7 job, and it can be totally overwhelming. And obviously, I'm the first child in my family of 3, and I think the learning curve was steep for my parents when they parented me. But you can't count on it, what you learned the first time applying the next time, because children are different. They have different personalities and they have different needs, and so you have to be able to be always on your toes. And so that's kind of the message I want to bring this time, is looking at okay, how do parents uh, interact with their children, their infants and their toddlers? I think the first 3 years are the most important for parents to interact and to build a foundation for authenticity. And there's two basic needs. I think I talked about this earlier, but just to reiterate, the two basic needs that infants come with when they're born is a need for bonding and attachment, and a need for being able to create a separate, authentic child, or a separate authentic self. And by age 3, if parents knew what to do, that could be in place. However, the research doesn't support that, because the research shows that about only half of infants leave infancy with a secure bonding and attachment, and only about 5% leave the second stage, which I call the separation or counter-dependent stage, leave that stage with an intact, separate true self. And so we got a lot of work to do. And yet it's not rocket science. There's a lot of small things that parents can do that I'm going to be talking about this month that I think could be very useful to them. And so that's my goal this month, is to really look at what kind of things can parents do that make it possible for their children to build that foundation by age 3. And next month, I'll talk about what to do after that with teenagers and things like that. But if you built that foundation, the rest of it is pretty easy. So that's where I want to start with it. I have a couple of things that I wanted to share. Sort of, the first one is kind of a lighthearted one. It's and I think you have an image of this, about things that your parents used to say to you. There it is. And maybe some of you identify with these. I can identify with a few of them. Do you think I'm made of money? Or were you born in a barn? And then the classic is, well, why do I have to do this? Because I said so. Or stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about. I mean, you look through this list and it's kind of ridiculous, some of the things we say to our children. Yet we do it. And I imagine I did some of those myself when I was raising my children. Another one that's very important is when children complain about what you're doing to them, they say, "This is for your own good." Do you remember any of these, Ashley?
Yeah, I don't know if I heard as many from my mom, but definitely like my grandparents probably. um, and I think I can identify with a few of them, and
Yeah.
um, you definitely hit the nail on the head in that I've caught myself wanting to say a lot of these as in
Yeah.
response, and because I've heard them myself. So it's good to be aware of, and sometimes it's nice to see them in this format, because I mean, when you read these, yeah, you can laugh at them, right? But then when you're in the moment, they seem like the right thing to say, because that's what you're taught, right? If that's what your parents did. So
And they can have long-lasting impact on us,
for sure.
on children, and because they don't know any better. If they hear these things from their parents, they think these are like the words out of a god or goddess. They're the absolute truth. The one addition on this list that had long-term effects on me, I think I finally have gotten through this one, but it took me a long time. It was when they were punishing me for something that they didn't like that I was doing. They would add to the punishment by saying, "What do you think the neighbors would think of you?" And I've spent most of my life wondering what the neighbors think, which is not a very good thing to be thinking about when you're trying to be an authentic person. So I've had to battle with that one for a long time. So what do parents say to kids? What should they say? Well, there's another list I have, which isn't much better. If your parents had told you their truth, they might have said some of the following things, and you have them right in front of you, and you can maybe identify what some of these are. They aren't very pretty, because these are the real truth, that some parents feel these things, and kids pick up. They're intuitive and sensitive enough. They pick up these subtly, they don't even have to hear them. But the first one is really didn't want children, so I tried to ignore you as much as possible and stay focused on my own life. All the way down to the last one. You are not really a real person to me, honestly. I didn't think much about you very much. So, and then others are, I mean, these are things that parents probably thought, some parents thought, and I know my clients, uh, in the way they tell me about what their childhood was like, I'm sure they had parents who were thinking these things because of the way they acted towards their children. Uh, and number 9, I knew what was best for you, so you didn't have to contribute any of your ideas. Uh, you see how these, even though they're never spoken, are sort of there, and parents, in their interactions with their children, often act this way. Any comments?
I think it's a really uncomfortable amount of statements, right? I think that there are moments when even if we don't always feel these ways, sometimes we do.
Yeah, I
And it's good to identify those truths sometimes. And I think that I think there are a lot of people that have kids for maybe the wrong reasons, and it results in a lot of these things and these
yeah,
these truths that can't be told, or they feel like they can't, but they, like you said, subliminally will transfer the message through the way
yeah.
that they act otherwise. Just sad.
I actually got number 10 from my grandmother. She said, "Your parents have so many problems of their own. Don't give them any more problems. Be a good boy."
Mhm.
And I took that to heart. And to my own detriment, I tried to always be a good boy,
Yeah.
and sometimes discounting my own needs in the process of that. So some of these, that one I heard definitely from my grandmother, not from my parents, but it had an impact on me big time. So anyway, the way I think to look at this is that if parents don't really be authentic with their children and treat their children in authentic ways, by the time the child is 3, they have developed not an authentic self, but a false self. And then that becomes the way what they live out of until they finally realize that that probably isn't the best way to operate as an adult. And hopefully they might read my books about Get Real, or watch this podcast and learn that there are other ways that you can operate if you can be more authentic. So, I mean, and these patterns they get transferred over and over again, and if they're not brought to consciousness, and what I always say is, if you can name it, you can tame it. So, identifying the patterns, identifying the things that are the inauthentic kinds of ways we interact with our kids is the first step in changing that. And so I remember I had one client who she kept telling me about as a parent, her kids when their father did something they didn't like, they'd come to her and say, "Do something about him." and and she said, "Well, I can't do anything about him, but I guess I could try." And then another point, she was telling me about her childhood, and she said, "When I was a teenager, uh, my father would do things that I didn't like, and I would always I would talk to my mother and say, 'Do something about him.'" Here she found herself repeating that, actually conveying that somehow to her kids, the same pattern that she grew up with. And when she realized that, it was like, "Oh my God, I didn't realize that was happening." So anyway, I want to go over the characteristics of an authentic parent. So if you want to put that up on the screen, you have that there. 20 characteristics of authentic parent. Yeah. I won't be able to go over all these, but this is available to you to look at. And basically, I'll just talk about number 2 to start with, because that's one of the biggest ones. Make your children your top priority in everything you say or do, so that you don't let anything else interfere with that commitment. That's one of the first characteristics. Listen to your children with an open heart. Listen to them with an open heart, and be present to receive them, and whatever they're feeling and telling you about their feelings. This gives them a sense that their feelings are important to you. Uh, Down below, number 10, know how to regulate your emotions, because a lot of times children will do things that trigger us into, and as a parent, what I'm talking about. And I found, incidentally, that we get triggered in the same ways that we probably got triggered as a child. Our children then mirror things that we probably had memories of as a child. And so that is a big job for parents, because often when they discipline their children, they're disciplining their children in a dysregulated state of emotions, and they overdo it, and over punish and criticize, and maybe even shame their children when they're feeling dysregulated. And so, anyway, any kind of uh, activity that does this, there's a second page. Turn to that second page, and I'll give you the rest of them. There's just a couple on this page. I wanted to be patient with yourself. Patience is a virtue when it comes to parenting. You get tested all the time with that one, and also take responsibility for everything that you do or say. This models for your children the most important characteristic of being a responsible adult. If you're not behaving responsibly, it's likely they're not going to be when they grow up. Express your emotions. Watch for projections of things that are unfinished in you that you project on your kids, and give. And one of the most important ones throughout their time with you is to give your children twice as many yeses as nos, and that's a challenge sometimes for parents. And what the research shows, that a 2-year-old has heard the word no 20,000 times. So it would be a challenge for most parents to issue 40,000 yeses to counter those 20,000 nos. But that's what we have to do. And sometimes it's, no, you can't do that, but here's 2 other things that you could do. So it's being creative and talking about things that you can say yes to, even if at the time you say no. And also responding to their excitement with joy, and their joy with empathy. And this is a big one for parents, is that understanding that really, when a child comes to you, a toddler particularly, who's just has a love affair with the world, and they're excited about something they just discovered, and they bring it to you or they tell you about it, and your response is important, because if you say, well, I'm really proud of you, or I think that's great that you did that, that's one thing. But the best thing you can do is, wow, I see how excited you are about learning this new thing. That's great that you've learned this new thing and you're so excited about it. So you turn the feelings back to them, and instead of giving your feelings about what they did, you reflect back their feelings. That's extremely important in helping create that authentic sense of self, because when a child at age 2 to 3 is able to trust their own feelings, they can go more on internal power. They don't have to resort to trying to find what other people think about that or feel about that. They can trust their own feelings. So those are some of the things that I think are important to focus on. And I guess the other thing I would like to say is that in working with people early on, I found that a lot of people were coming to me as adults, and they had all the symptoms of childhood trauma. Yet they didn't have any incidents they could remember that caused the trauma. And I began to think there's something wrong with this, something I'm missing. What I realized was that most of the traumas that they were telling me had to do with neglect, not abuse. So it was something that didn't happen rather than something that did happen. And so I began to then study neglect as much as I did abuse as a long-term effect of any kind of trauma that might have happened in their childhood. Uh, so the other thing that I'm going to talk about next time, mostly next month, is family patterns, intergenerational family patterns that make it almost impossible to be authentic unless you really understand what these patterns are and the effect they're having on you and they're having on your children. So I want to dig deep into that next month, but just a kind of a heads up that that's another area of why people have a hard time being parenting children to be authentic. So what do you got to say about all this?
I think it's a great start to the month. I think we'll be able to learn quite a few things. This is a great first episode to kind of kick things off and bring some awareness of, especially for myself, of what to watch for in certain moments and what to do, when that happens, just to at least start creating awareness. But I'm excited for the next 3 weeks to see what might be some more ways, some tools and ways to help create that more authentic relationship and be a better parent and be able to raise my children in a way that gives them a healthy
Yeah.
outlook.
So next month next week I'll zero in on specific things that you can do to raise an authentic child in the bonding and attachment stage. What things you do at birth and in the first 9 or 10 months of their life that can help build a foundation for creating an authentic self.
Awesome. I'm really looking forward to it. I hope we get to dive in soon. I'm excited. We'll see you next time. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
There. Bye.
For more information, please visit the Colorado Institute for Conflict Resolution and Creative Leadership at CICRCL.org or click the link in the show notes.